I used to think I was living the dream. A nice house, a beautiful wife, 2 great kids, and a steady paycheck. Laura didn't need to work. Heck, I wanted her to stay home, raise the kids, and enjoy life. But she began to break down under the weight of household chores. So I hired a housekeeper who took over all the household chores. And my wife? She started taking care of herself. And what did I get in return? Lies. Nightly disappearances. And the smell of another man's cologne on my pillow. It was betrayal. So what were my actions? I made a plan. A brutal one. 1 romantic dinner. 2 envelopes. And a surprise that would change everything. I've never heard of surprises like that. She paid for her betrayal in full. 7 long years. I handled it like a boss. But let's rewind and walk through this whole story. I worked as a construction foreman. Long days, rough hands, steel-toed boots, and enough pay to keep the lights on and food on the table without sweating every bill. It wasn't glamorous, but I liked working with my hands, being outside, solving problems with tools and sweat. My wife, Laura, stayed home with the kids. That had always been the plan. Jake was 9, Ellie was 6, and they were a handful. Sweet, smart, full of energy, but a lot. From the outside, it probably looked like she had it easy. 2 kids in school, a husband who provided. But the truth is, Laura didn't sit around eating bonbons and watching daytime TV. Every day was a grind. She was up before the sun, making breakfast, packing lunches, laying out school clothes. She'd drive the kids to school, 2 different drop-offs, opposite ends of town thanks to zoning nonsense. Then she'd hit the grocery store, pick up prescriptions, swing by the dry cleaners, and be back home by mid-morning. That's when the cleaning started, vacuuming, dishes, wiping sticky fingerprints off the fridge door, sorting laundry that never seemed to stop piling up. Sometimes she'd try to catch up on calls or manage the never-ending paperwork schools and doctors seemed to love dumping on us. By early afternoon, she was back in the car, picking up Ellie, then Jake. Then came homework, snacks, arguments, and chasing them around the house making sure they didn't destroy everything. Dinner didn't cook itself. Afterward, there were baths, story time, and then, finally, bedtime routines that felt more like hostage negotiations than anything peaceful. And it was like that every single day. No breaks. No time off. No weekends. I saw it happening slowly, the way where shows up in a tool you've used too many years. Laura started moving slower. Her face got this tired kind of tightness to it, like she was always clenching something inside. She forgot things more often. Burned dinner once or twice, which was out of character for her. The spark in her voice dulled. The smiles came less and less, and when they did, they looked worn out. She stopped laughing at the kids' antics. She used to snap photos every other day, always posting little moments, Ellie in a tutu, Jake building a Lego fort. But lately, her phone stayed face down on the counter, untouched unless it buzzed with a school message or a reminder to refill a prescription. One night, I got home late, overtime at the site, and the house was dark. No dinner smell, no noise. I found Laura sitting at the kitchen table, the kids already in bed, her head resting in her hands. The kitchen was a mess. She looked up, her eyes red. "Sorry," she said, trying to pull herself together. "I just couldn't do it all today." That hit me. My wife, who had always held the fort, saying she just couldn't anymore. Another night, I saw her sitting in the laundry room, surrounded by a mountain of unfolded clothes. She had Ellie's tiny socks in her hands, just staring down at them like they were puzzle pieces that wouldn't fit. She didn't hear me come in. I backed out and gave her space. I didn't know what to say then. At the time, I didn't think she was failing. I thought she was drowning. I asked her once, softly, over morning coffee, "Do you think you're just tired? Burned out?" She shrugged, didn't look up from the mug. "I just feel like I'm always behind. Like nothing's ever finished. Like I don't get to sit down and breathe without thinking of what's next." I tried to help where I could. Started folding laundry while watching the news. Took over Jake's math homework a few nights a week, even though his 5th grade math made my brain hurt. I offered to cook once in a while, my dad's spaghetti or grilled cheese and tomato soup, but I knew it wasn't much. There was this one Saturday when I had the day off. I offered to take the kids out, just to give her some space. When I came back, the house was spotless, but Laura was asleep on the couch, curled up like a child, still wearing jeans and socks. She never even heard us come in. The truth was, she didn't have a minute to herself. Not really. People think stay-at-home moms live the easy life, but it's like managing a company where the employees don't listen, the phones never stop ringing, and there's no paycheck or lunch break. She didn't need hobbies or fulfillment. She needed help. I just hadn't realized how bad it had gotten. She was fading, not because she lacked purpose or had too much free time, but because she was holding the whole damn household on her shoulders, and it was slowly breaking her down. I remember one night after dinner. Jake had spilled a glass of milk, Ellie was refusing to brush her teeth, and I found Laura in the pantry with her forehead resting against the shelf, breathing real slow. "I can't even cry anymore," she said, not looking at me. "I'm just empty." That's when I knew something had to change. I couldn't just watch the woman I married turn into a ghost of herself while I kept coming home to warm dinners and packed lunches like everything was fine. She didn't need pep talks. She didn't need a spa coupon. She needed a lifeline. And it was time I gave it to her. One evening, not long after Jake's parent-teacher night and Ellie's first-grade art show, I came home to find the kitchen dark, dishes still in the sink, and the smell of something burnt lingering in the air. Laura was on the couch with a blanket around her shoulders, staring out the window at nothing in particular. She didn't hear me come in. The kids had already put themselves to bed. Jake brushed his teeth without being told, and Ellie had climbed into bed still wearing her socks. Laura hadn't even tucked them in. That night, I sat down next to her on the couch and turned off the TV. The screen had been playing one of those home renovation shows, but I doubt she'd watched a second of it. I rubbed the back of her hand and said, "We need to talk." Her shoulders tensed. I think she thought I was going to ask her what was wrong again, or maybe bring up the dishes. But I didn't. I just said, "What if we got you some help around here?" She blinked. "Help?" "Yeah," I said. "A housekeeper. A nanny. Both. Whatever you need. I've done the math. We can afford it. I just want you to breathe a little again." For a long time, she didn't say anything. Just looked at me with this stunned expression, like she couldn't believe I was serious. Her eyes started watering, and she turned away like she was embarrassed. "I'm supposed to be the one holding it together," she said. "This is what I signed up for. And I signed up to take care of you," I told her. She started crying. Not like the quiet crying I'd seen before, the kind where she tried to hide it. This time she let it out. Not loud or messy, just real. Like she'd been holding her breath for a long time and finally let go. We hugged for a while, and that was that. The next week, I found Denise through a coworker's wife. She was in her late 40s, had raised 4 kids of her own, and had been working with families in town for years. Came with glowing recommendations and didn't blink at the size of the job. She had kind eyes, gray streaks in her ponytail, and walked into our house like she'd already lived there once. The kids liked her right away. Denise took over in a way that didn't feel intrusive. She came in the mornings, made breakfast, packed the kids' lunches, drove them to school. She handled the grocery shopping, the laundry, and kept the house cleaner than it had been in years. Dinner was always on the table by 6, hot and ready. And it wasn't just boxed mac and cheese or frozen pizza. Denise cooked like someone's southern grandma. Chicken pot pie, slow-cooked ribs, mashed potatoes with real butter. That kind of cooking. At first, Laura hovered. She'd offer to help Denise fold laundry or double-check the list before she went to the store. But Denise was gentle with her, firm in the kind way older women are. She'd smile and say, "Why don't you go take a walk or sit out back a bit? Let me earn my keep." After a week or two, Laura did just that. I started noticing little things. Her shoulders didn't look so tight anymore. Her hands weren't always busy with something. One afternoon, I came home early and found her in the backyard, barefoot in the grass, flipping through a book with a glass of lemonade beside her. She looked up and actually smiled, full and soft like she hadn't in months. Soon she signed up for a Pilates class down at the rec center. Then a friend of hers, Monica, I think, talked her into trying one of those early morning yoga sessions in the park. Before long, she was going 3 times a week. Then came the gym membership. Then the spa appointments. She started seeing her friends more. Not just texting, but going out for coffee, getting lunch, meeting up on Saturdays to walk the farmer's market. She even dragged me to this wine tasting event one evening. I didn't know a thing about wine, but seeing her laugh and talk again, I'd have gone to 10 more just like it. Laura started dressing different too. Not fancy, but put together. Hair curled, a little blush on her cheeks, new earrings. She started buying those flowy cardigans and high-waisted jeans that all the women at Target wear. I teased her about it once, and she flipped her hair like a teenager and told me I'd better watch out. She might be catching up to the trends. I wasn't jealous. I was happy. Genuinely. It was like watching her come back to life. The house ran smoother than it ever had. I didn't come home to dishes piled in the sink or homework left undone. Jake's projects were finished on time. Ellie had her hair brushed and bows in it. The bills were paid. The laundry was folded. It was like a well-oiled machine, and Laura finally had room to breathe again. And I felt proud. I'd done something right. I'd seen my wife hurting and found a way to ease the weight she'd been carrying. That meant more to me than anything else. We even had dinners together again, just the two of us sometimes. She'd tell me about some lady at Pilates who kept falling asleep during meditation, or how her friend Lisa was thinking of getting a tattoo for her 40th. I listened, smiling, watching her talk with her hands like she used to. She glowed. There's no other word for it. She glowed. I remember one night in particular. It was just after Ellie's birthday party. The kids had gone to bed, and Laura was sitting at the kitchen island with a glass of wine, flipping through her phone and humming along to a country song on the radio. Her hair was in this loose braid down her back, and she had this contented look on her face, like someone who had finally found their rhythm again. She looked up at me and said, "Thank you for giving me space to find myself again." I just nodded, because that's all I ever wanted. For her to feel whole again. For us to feel whole again. At the time, I thought we were on the right track. I really did. A few months after Denise started, the whole house had a different rhythm to it. There was less chaos in the mornings. Fewer meltdowns over mismatched socks or forgotten lunches. Dinner didn't feel rushed or thrown together anymore. The house stayed clean. The laundry bins didn't overflow. And Laura? She had a glow about her that reminded me of our early days. I started thinking maybe it was time for her to do something for herself. I'd been watching her flourish with all that extra time, and I figured, hey, maybe now's her moment. Maybe she'd go back to teaching or finish that art degree she once talked about when we were dating. I remember she used to draw these little cartoon sketches in the margins of her journals, funny little scenes from our life. She had talent, no doubt about it. So one night after dinner, I brought it up. You ever think about picking something back up? I asked. Maybe take a class or start a side business. You've got space now. Maybe it's time. She paused, fork midair, and gave me this soft smile. I don't know, she said. It's just nice to not be tired all the time. I nodded, not wanting to push. I just thought maybe you'd want more. Something for you. She set her fork down and reached across the table to touch my hand. This is for me, she said. The quiet. The peace. Being able to breathe. I didn't argue. After everything she'd been through, if this was what healing looked like, then fine. Let her have it. At first, I thought it was harmless. She started going to Pilates in the mornings, then grabbing coffee with friends afterward. Then it was yoga in the park on Saturdays and lunch dates with the mom's circle on Wednesdays. I was glad she had people again, glad she was laughing more, wearing clothes that made her feel pretty. But little things started to shift. Jake asked me one night if I could help him with his science fair board because Mom doesn't know where the glue gun is, but Denise does. Ellie told me that Denise gave better hugs than Mommy. One morning, I caught myself asking Denise where Jake's cleats were because Laura had stopped being the go-to for that kind of thing. She wasn't around. She used to be the one reading bedtime stories. Now it was Denise. She used to pack lunches, heart-shaped sandwiches, and little notes in Ellie's bag. Now Denise handled that. And Laura? She was out. Pilates, brunch, shopping, getting her nails done, coming home with bags she didn't need and stories about women I didn't know. She started wearing more makeup. Nothing crazy, just more than usual. New perfume, too. One I didn't recognize. I asked about it once and she waved it off, said it was a gift from one of the girls. Same with the earrings, the new shoes, the phone case that suddenly had glitter on it. She laughed more. Just not with us. I remember this one Saturday morning. I was working on the backyard fence, had a power drill in one hand and a coffee in the other. Jake and Ellie were running around the yard, playing some made-up game with plastic swords. Laura came outside in full makeup, hair done, wearing a sundress I hadn't seen before. Going somewhere? I asked. She smiled and kissed my cheek. Just meeting up with the girls. Lisa's got a wine tasting thing downtown. What time you'll be back? She shrugged. Not too late. Denise stayed inside with the kids while I finished the fence and grilled dinner. Laura didn't come back until after 9. The kids were already in bed. Her voice was light when she walked in, a little too cheerful, like she was still buzzing from whatever energy she'd soaked up out there. That became a pattern. She was gone more often than she was home. Always something, always someone to meet, somewhere to be. Her schedule was suddenly full. If she wasn't out with friends, she was at the gym. If she wasn't at the gym, she was at the spa. One time I asked her to come to Jake's game on a Tuesday night, and she told me she had a candle-making class. I didn't even know she liked candles. I tried to tell myself it was just a phase, that she was finally relaxing, taking care of herself. God knows she'd earned a break. But deep down, something started to feel off. She stopped asking about my day. Didn't notice when I shaved off the beard I'd had for 6 years. Didn't ask about the plumbing issue in the downstairs bathroom. Didn't even react when I told her we were short on savings for the month. It was like she was floating in her own little world, and the rest of us were just background noise. Denise became more of a mom than Laura in the daily sense. She handled the appointments, the lunches, the forgotten library books, and the PDA forms. I knew something wasn't right when Ellie called her Mama D one afternoon without flinching. Laura just laughed. "I guess I should be flattered," she said, sipping on her smoothie. I didn't laugh. I just stared at her. That night, I stayed up later than usual, sitting at the kitchen table with the lights low, nursing a beer and looking around the house. It was clean, quiet, perfectly run. But it didn't feel like home. Not without Laura really in it. I didn't want to believe what my gut was starting to whisper. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was just feeling left out, that I should be happy she wasn't crying in the laundry room anymore. But still, something had changed. She had peace, sure. Freedom even. But fulfillment? I couldn't tell. And more, I was starting to wonder if what she really wanted wasn't a break from chores, but a break from us. One Thursday night, she said she was meeting Monica and a few of the girls for a wine tasting. I told her to have fun and gave her a kiss before she left. She looked great, hair curled, lipstick just right, heels I hadn't seen in a while. She smelled like vanilla and something sharper underneath it. Perfume I didn't recognize. I figured it was just part of her new routine. But when she got home around midnight, she was wobbly and loud, laughing at nothing and shushing herself like a teenager sneaking in past curfew. I helped her out of her coat and got hit with a smell I couldn't place. It wasn't wine. Wasn't anything she drank at home. But it was there, under the perfume, faint but sharp. Something musky, like a man's cologne. "Smells like you hugged someone on your way out," I joked, hoping to sound casual. She paused for a second, then gave me a look like I was being ridiculous. "Monica's boyfriend picked us up. He wears way too much cologne." She laughed, too loud. I forced a smile. The next morning, I checked the trash can in the upstairs bathroom. Lipstick smudged tissue, a receipt from a bar I'd never heard of. The timestamp said 11:22 p.m. She wasn't even home until after midnight. I wanted to ask her about it, but I stopped myself. What was I going to say? "Hey, I dug through the trash because I don't trust you?" I told myself it was one night. But then there was another, and another. The stories didn't line up. The timelines were fuzzy. She'd leave saying she was meeting Lisa for coffee, but come back dressed like she'd been out for cocktails. Said she went to a boutique sale downtown, but there were no bags. Said her phone died, but I saw the charger in her purse. She started guarding her phone like it held national secrets. Used to be, her phone would be sitting face up on the counter while she cooked. Now it was always face down, always locked, always close to her side. I'd walk by the couch and see her texting, and she'd tilt the screen away like I was snooping. Once, I caught a glimpse of a message pop up when she wasn't fast enough to hide it. Just a name I didn't recognize, no last name, no photo followed by, "Miss you already." When I asked who it was, she laughed it off. "It's just a friend from Pilates," she said. "He's funny. Teases everyone." That didn't sit right with me, but I didn't push. Her car started showing up with the passenger seat moved back, way back. I drive her car to the shop once every few months, and I know her seat settings. They don't change unless someone taller's been riding with her. Then there was the time she came home wearing a shirt I hadn't seen before. I noticed because the tag was still poking out the back. "New?" I asked. She hesitated. "Oh, yeah." Monica and I swung by the outlet mall. It was a 2-for-1. Only there were no bags. No receipt. And when I asked Monica about it the next week in passing, she looked at me like I was speaking Greek. Sometimes I'd walk into a room and the conversation would stop. Her phone would suddenly be on silent. Her smile would feel practiced. I started reading into everything. Her tone, her outfits, the way she laughed at text messages I didn't get to see. I started checking our bank statements more closely. Found charges at restaurants we never ate at. Drinks at rooftop bars we'd never been to. A hotel receipt from a place out by the interstate, just one night, Midweek. I stopped asking questions. Started watching more. Observing. Documenting things in my head. What time she left. What she was wearing. When she came back. Who she said she was with. How long her phone stayed unlocked when she walked away from it. What name popped up on notifications when it lit up in the dark. My body was in that bed. My mind was somewhere else. Watching. Waiting. I stopped reaching for her hand in the car. Stopped asking if she wanted to go out to dinner. I didn't know who I was talking to anymore when she looked at me. Her eyes were different. Her smile had shifted. Even her silence didn't sound the same. It felt like I was living beside a stranger who still had my wife's face. And still, some part of me held on to hope. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe it was just a rough patch. Maybe this was all in my head. But the truth is, when you love someone, you can feel it in your bones when they start hiding pieces of themselves from you. And Laura? She wasn't just hiding. She was disappearing. There's a line between suspicion and certainty, and once you cross it, there's no way back. I didn't want to cross that line. I told myself to stay calm, to be patient, to wait it out. Maybe she was just pulling away because she needed something I wasn't giving. Maybe I'd let work take too much from me. Maybe we both just needed to reset. But deep down, I knew I wasn't imagining things. And as much as I wanted to believe this was all some kind of misunderstanding, the pit in my stomach told a different story. You can't argue with your gut forever. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. I didn't tell anyone. Not my brother. Not my buddies at work. Not even Denise, though I think she knew something was off. I called a number I found online one evening when Laura was out grabbing sushi with her new gym friend. A quiet voice on the other end walked me through the process, like this wasn't the first time someone like me had made that call. He said his name was Carl. Said he was discreet, fast, and didn't take money unless he found something real. I don't want drama, I told him. Just truth. He didn't ask why. I think he already knew. We met twice in person, once at a diner off the highway and once in the parking lot of a strip mall across town. I gave him a recent photo, a basic list of her routines, the names she'd been dropping lately. Lisa, Monica, Julia. He nodded like he'd heard it all before. I'll check in after a couple weeks, he said, sliding the folder into his bag. Give it a little time. These things take shape when no one's looking. The waiting was worse than I imagined. Every time Laura left the house, my mind jumped to places I didn't want it to go. I'd lie in bed, picturing her in some stranger's car, wondering what lies she was telling, wondering if she ever looked back at our front door and felt even a second of guilt. I stopped asking where she was going, stopped pretending I believed the stories, just sat quiet and watched the days pass. 3 weeks in, I got a text from Carl. Can we meet tomorrow? It said. That was all. I drove out to the same diner where we'd met the first time. Carl was already there, sipping black coffee and flipping through a worn notebook. When he saw me, he slid a manila envelope across the table and leaned back in the booth. I figured you'd want the full thing in print, he said. I didn't say anything. I just opened it. Inside were photos. Dozens. Time-stamped, location tagged. Laura, smiling, arms around a tall guy with a sculpted jaw and gym clothes, walking out of a juice bar. Another of her getting into his car outside a local fitness studio. Then there were the screenshots, texts, messages, even a selfie she'd sent him. Nothing explicit, but close enough. He was a personal trainer. Mid-30s. Single. From what Carl had found, he worked at a gym she'd been going to on and off for the last couple months. And that wasn't the end of it. There was another guy. Different setting entirely. A bar downtown I'd never heard of, caught in grainy camera stills. Laura at the bar with a guy who looked even younger, maybe late 20s, rough beard, bartender type. Same kind of closeness. Same body language. Same damn smile. Carl cleared his throat. Far as I can tell, she sees them both. Not at the same time. Alternates, depending on who's available. I swallowed hard. My mouth was dry. Where'd she meet this one? I asked, tapping the picture of the bartender. Through a friend. Julia, I think. They're on social media together. I closed the folder slowly. My hands were steady, but my heart wasn't. I'm sorry, Carl said, genuinely. I wish I had better news. I nodded, paid for his coffee, and walked out to my truck. I sat there for 20 minutes without starting the engine. That night, I didn't go straight home. I parked out front, cut the lights, and stared at our house. The porch light was on. The blinds were open. I could see movement inside, Denise cleaning up dinner, Jake and Ellie setting the table for dessert. Laura wasn't home yet. I sat on the porch an hour later, bourbon in one hand, that envelope in the other, and cried like I hadn't cried in years. I wasn't mad. Not yet. That came later. What I felt was something else entirely. Something quiet. Numbing. Like I'd fallen through a trapdoor I never saw coming. This wasn't just betrayal, it was the collapse of a world I thought was mine. I thought about the early years. The first house we rented together. The time she painted the nursery yellow because we didn't know if Jake was going to be a boy or a girl. The Christmas we stayed up until 2 a.m. building a dollhouse because the instructions were in French. All of it, just memories now. And tainted. The woman I loved, the woman I built a life with, was out there, laughing in the arms of men who didn't know the real her. Who hadn't watched her cry through Jake's first fever. Who hadn't seen her dance with Ellie in the kitchen wearing socks and pajamas. And me? I was just the guy who paid the bills and believed the lies. I didn't finish the bourbon. Just set it down and went inside. I nodded to Denise. Tucked Ellie in. Checked Jake's homework. And then I sat down at the kitchen table, pulled out a pen and a yellow notepad, and started writing. Not a letter. Not a speech. A plan. I told her we were going out to celebrate a little early, just the two of us. Dinner before her birthday weekend. She smiled like it was the sweetest thing in the world. Said it had been a while since we'd done something just the two of us. I nodded, kept my voice even. Told her to wear something nice. She came down the stairs in that red dress. The one she hadn't worn in years. I remember she used to call it her fun dress. Said it made her feel young. Back then, it did. This time, it just looked like a costume. Still, I held the door for her. Complimented her. Played my part. We drove to a steakhouse downtown. Candlelight, cloth napkins, live jazz in the corner. One of those places with the kind of lighting that makes everyone look a little softer, a little more romantic. We made small talk. She ordered a glass of wine, smiled over the rim like she used to, kept glancing at my face like she was trying to figure something out. I just listened. Nodded. Kept it light. Dinner was quiet. She talked about a book club meeting. A new friend from the gym. I let her go on. I didn't need to respond. I already had everything I needed. Once the plates were cleared, I reached into my coat and pulled out 2 envelopes. Plain white. One thicker than the other. I set them on the table in front of her, right beside her wine glass. She looked at them, confused, then lit up. Oh my God, she said. Are these tickets? Like, Maldives? I shook my head. Go ahead. Open them. She laughed, nervous and excited, and picked up the thicker envelope first. Opened it slowly, like it might hold diamonds. Her eyes scanned the first page. Then the second. Her smile disappeared. Jaw stiffened. Hands frozen halfway through flipping the packet. Divorce papers? She whispered. I didn't answer. She looked up at me, blinked hard. I saw the questions forming in her eyes, the panic starting to bubble under the surface. Keep going, I said. Open the second one. Her hands trembled. She slipped a finger under the flap and peeled it open. Out came photos. Screenshots. Dates. Times. Receipts. One by one, she lifted them, each one stealing the color from her face. A photo of her hugging that trainer in the gym parking lot. Another of her holding hands with that bartender in a hotel lobby, wearing the dress I bought her for our anniversary. She didn't say anything. Didn't cry. Just stared. I know, I said. I've known for a while. She opened her mouth, voice low. I can explain. Don't bother, I cut her off. This isn't about a fight. It's not a scene. This is closure. She looked back down at the papers. Probably wondering what else I knew. Probably trying to figure out how long I've been sitting on this. I've already spoken to a lawyer, I said, voice steady. The finances are split. You walk away with nothing. Her head jerked up. What? You can't be serious. That's not fair. Fair. I laughed, short and dry. I gave you a life people dream about. You had peace. Freedom. Time to find yourself. And instead, you found someone else's arms. She stared at me, wide-eyed, like she didn't recognize who I was anymore. I built this life, I said, leaning in. The house is in my name. The accounts are already locked. You have no job, no income, and I'm well within my rights. She tried to speak again, but nothing came out. There's an infidelity clause in the prenup, I said. You signed it. Remember? Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound followed. Just air. You're not getting a divorce yet, I added. Not until the kids are old enough. Her eyebrows furrowed. What are you saying? I'm saying you're going to be the wife and mother you signed up to be. No more girls' nights. No more spa days. No more little side adventures. She sat up straighter. And if I don't? I leaned back in my chair, lifted my bourbon, and looked her dead in the eyes. If you don't, I said, I'll bury you in court so deep you won't see daylight until the kids are grown. Everything's documented. Dates, faces, receipts. You want to test me? She didn't answer. I finished my drink, stood up, and buttoned my jacket. She was still sitting there, frozen, hands clenched in her lap, two envelopes resting on the white tablecloth in front of her like twin gravestones. I walked out without another word, and left her sitting in the glow of that candlelight, shaking like a leaf in a storm. The morning after the dinner, Laura didn't come downstairs right away. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, watching the sunlight crawl across the floor. Denise was already in the kitchen starting on breakfast like she always did, but I told her not to bother. I thanked her, told her I appreciated everything she had done for our family, but her services were no longer needed. She didn't ask questions, just looked at me, nodded slowly, and said, if you ever need a reference, let me know. I handed her a sealed envelope with a bonus check inside and walked her to the door. I think she knew it wasn't really about her. Laura came downstairs just after Denise left. No makeup, messy hair, one of my old flannel shirts hanging off her shoulders. She looked at me like she was walking into a courtroom. The kids are still asleep, she said. Good, I replied. We need to talk. She stood at the bottom of the stairs, arms crossed, waiting. I've already called the bank, I said. Your cards are canceled. Your access to the accounts is frozen. She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. I'm not here to argue. This is just how it's going to be. From now on, you're the housewife. The one we should have had before I brought someone in to carry your load. Her jaw clenched. She didn't say a word. You'll get the kids ready for school. You'll cook, clean, do laundry, run errands. And if you so much as step out of this house without them, if you lie to me again, I'll drag you back into court with every photo, message, and receipt I have. You can't control me like this, she snapped. I'm not controlling you, I said. I'm enforcing consequences. That was the new arrangement. She didn't like it, but she didn't fight it either. Not at first. She went through the motions, got up early, made breakfast, packed lunches. I watched her do what Denise used to do, and I could tell it burned her inside. I moved into the guest bedroom that same week, carried in a spare dresser, and stacked my jeans and flannels next to the old twin bed. No ceremony, no discussion, just facts. We weren't sharing a life anymore. We were just under the same roof. At night, I'd hear her walking around the house after the kids went to bed. Not pacing, just moving quiet, slow, aimless. Like she didn't know what to do with herself now that the distractions were gone. I took over managing the bills again. Grocery lists, field trip forms, fixing the leaky sink and mowing the lawn. Things a husband normally handles, sure, but I wasn't her husband anymore. Not really. I was the man who still lived in the house for the kids' sake. Nothing more. It didn't take long before the cracks showed in her new routine. Some days she'd burn dinner. Some mornings she'd forget to pack a lunch, and I'd have to run a sandwich up to school. The kids noticed. Ellie asked why Denise wasn't there anymore. Jake just stayed quiet, like he understood more than he should. And then, well, I started seeing someone. It wasn't planned. I wasn't looking. She was a teacher at Ellie's school. We met at a parent-teacher event and just started talking. Her name was Amanda. She had soft eyes and a calm voice, the kind that didn't rush to fill silence. She asked how I was doing, and when I answered with, I've had better years, she didn't pry. Just nodded like she understood. I didn't bring Amanda around the kids. Not then. And I sure didn't parade her in front of Laura. I wasn't trying to rub anything in. But one night, Laura saw a text message light up my phone when I left it on the counter. It was nothing racy, just a simple, hope your day went okay. Thinking of you. She didn't say anything right away. But later that night, she knocked on my guest room door. Who's Amanda? She asked. I looked up from the book I was pretending to read. A friend. She stepped inside without being invited. Her face was tight, her jaw set. Are you seeing her? I didn't answer. You are, she said, voice sharp. You moved on. I moved out, I said. Big difference. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. You're not even trying. I tried for years, I said. While you were out with your trainer and your bartender, I was sitting on the porch wondering what the hell I did wrong. She flinched, turned away for a second, then turned back, eyes red. I made a mistake. No, I said. You made a choice. And now you get to live with it. She looked like she wanted to yell, cry, throw something. But instead, she just stood there, breathing heavy, fist clenched at her sides. "How does it feel?" I asked, calmly. "To be the one left behind?" She didn't answer. She left the room without another word. That was the moment it all flipped. The weight she dumped on me for so long, now she was carrying it. Every quiet evening. Every time she saw me leave the house and didn't know where I was going. Every moment the kids laughed at my jokes and didn't ask where she was. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I just kept living. The house ran. The kids grew. And Laura? She kept moving through the motions like a woman who knew exactly what she lost. The years didn't fly by. They moved slow, like a truck hauling weight up a long incline. But they moved, and eventually, we reached the top. Jake grew tall, had his dad's shoulders and his mom's sharp eyes. By the time he was in high school, he was already thinking about trade school. Wanted to work with his hands. I didn't push college. I told him if he worked hard and kept his word, he'd be fine in this world. He did. Ellie turned into a firecracker. Funny, loud, fearless. She had this way of looking right through you when you tried to lie. A gift, I guess. Or maybe something she developed after seeing too much dishonesty too early. And Laura, well, she changed too. Not right away. But over time, she got quieter, slower, less flashy. She stopped with the Pilates and the brunches. The makeup started to gather dust in the bathroom drawer. I'd find her in the kitchen in the mornings, hair tied up, hands in soapy dishwater, just staring out the window. Not sad exactly. Just reflective. She cried less, cooked more. Never said much, but I noticed she tried harder with the kids. She made it to the games, the parent-teacher nights, the science fairs. She asked about their days. She made Jake's favorite stew every Sunday and painted Ellie's room lavender without even asking if it was okay. I think she finally understood what she'd thrown away. She never asked me to come back. Never asked me to try again. I think she knew the door was shut. We didn't fight. We didn't scream. It was just quiet. We lived like that, under the same roof but on different paths, until Ellie turned 13 and Jake started his freshman year. By then, it felt like we were just roommates with a long, complicated history. One morning, I put 2 mugs of coffee on the table. Hers, black with 1 sugar. Mine, splash of milk, same as always. "We should file," I said. She didn't look surprised. Just nodded. "Yeah, we should." It wasn't bitter. It wasn't emotional. It just was. We met with the lawyer, sat across from each other like strangers dividing up furniture. She didn't argue about the terms. She didn't ask for more time. Maybe she knew I had already given her years she didn't deserve. The day we signed the final papers, it was raining. Fitting, I guess. We stood in the hallway of the county office, waiting for our names to be called. She kept glancing at the floor. Her hands were shaking. When we finished, she turned to me. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I looked at her. The woman I had once built a life with. The one I'd held during storms, laughed with over burned dinners, dreamed beside under cheap blankets in our first apartment. The same woman who, somewhere along the way, stopped choosing me. And I felt nothing. Not hate. Not anger. Just peace. "I know," I said. Then I walked out. That was it. No dramatic goodbye. No second chances. Just a clean break and the quiet that follows. I went home, sat on the porch, and watched the rain come down. The house was still. The coffee in my thermos was still warm. It was over. Not just the marriage, but the wondering, the waiting, the questions that used to keep me up at night. She had burned the bridge, and I'd finally walked across what was left of it. I don't look back much. Life's too short for that. But sometimes, when I see Ellie braid her own hair in the mirror, or watch Jake tighten a bolt under the hood of his car with that quiet focus, I think about everything we made together. The good parts. And I remind myself that I survived it. Not with bitterness. Not with revenge. Just with clarity. She lost a man who would have stood by her through anything. And I lost someone who didn't know how to stay. But what I gained? Freedom. And the kind of peace that comes from knowing I gave everything I had, and then walked away when it was no longer mine to give. Share your thoughts in the comments. Was it right for him to stay for the kids, or should he have left sooner? If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.